Countdown to Halloween, featuring Gregory Miller's Dark Nights and Candlelight, 31 Tiny October Tales. Every night at exactly midnight, a new story will appear on StoryLink Radio's YouTube channel. You'll have 24 hours to listen, then it will disappear and the next one will appear. Plan to catch these each day or you'll miss one. Each story will be 2 to 13 minutes long. If you haven't already, be sure to listen to the introduction to the book right here on this channel. And now, tonight's story from Dark Nights and Candlelight, 31 Tiny October Tales.
October 27, the battle. We couldn't keep glass in the window frame to the spare bedroom. Neither could the woman who owned the house before us, nor the family before her. And no one liked sleeping in that room. They said they had horrible dreams and saw things out of the corners of their eyes. Daddy said the whole thing dated back to the Civil War, when a wounded rebel took shelter in the house with the help of a Miss Jane Thurston, who owned it back then. She did her best to nurse him back to health in that room, keeping it secret. But word got out. He tried escaping out the window, but some boys in blue caught him, tied one end of a sheet to the bedpost, the other around his neck, and threw him out of it instead. At first we thought the stories were all hogwash. Daddy found the nailed shut shutters ugly, so removed them with a crowbar and installed 4 panes of glass. Within a month he'd replaced the glass 4 times, and Grandma, Uncle Bert, and my friend Lucy all refused to sleep in that room again after each of them spent just one night there. After that, for better or worse, Daddy grudgingly came to believe in ghosts. Eventually the whole thing bugged him so much he had the window bricked up and the door bolted with 2 deadlocks. Now that worked for 16 years. During all that time, the brick wall remained in place, the door firmly locked. And if, once in a while we heard thumps or footsteps in the middle of a winter's night, a soft moaning after dinner in a summer dusk, it was easy to let slide. The source was always contained in the one place we no longer went. Eventually I moved away to college. Daddy continued living in the house all alone, and for a while things went on as they always had. Then one day I called Daddy up. He sounded preoccupied, so I asked him why. Water leaking from the ceiling into the den, he had said. There's pipes between the floors. I'll have to unlock the empty room and dig around in there. I guess the thought made us both a bit uneasy, but nothing more than that. It won't take long, Daddy said. Get the workmen in, get the pipe fixed, and get the hell out of there again. That's the plan, he said. But 2 days later, Daddy didn't answer his phone, nor the next day, and I started to worry. Home was a 6-hour drive from school. I couldn't bear the thought of making that long trip back, not knowing what I'd find when I got there. So I called Mrs. Gertz, who lived one farm over, and I asked her to check in on him. It wasn't but half an hour before she called me back. "Oh, child," she began, and of course that was all I needed to hear to know he was dead. Mrs. Gertz had found him huddled in a corner of the haunted room, a look of stark horror on his blue frozen face. I'll refrain from describing all the emotional turmoil that followed it. Suffice it to say that when all was said and done, I inherited the house and then had to decide what to do with it. The answer, if not the outcome, was simple. I would burn it down. I could never live there. I could never in good conscience sell it to anyone else, and I could never let what had happened to Daddy go unpunished. It was time to end it. And so I did. I frayed some electrical wires in the basement and conditioned it with some oily rags. I flicked the switch a few times, and I watched the sparks fly, fall, and set a fire. And then I went outside, and I watched the house's destruction from the backyard. I didn't feel good about any of it. I just felt relief, or at least closure, that it was all over and done. Hours later, exhausted, I went to sleep in a room at the local Super 8, and I slept like a log. Sometimes I think it's a blessing we can't see the future. Otherwise, we would never sleep well again. The next morning, lots of people were out walking, standing, talking, and shaking their heads. I heard the murmur of voices, the footsteps, the cars driving slowly by before I noticed that both windows to my room were broken. Glass covered the carpet, the courtesy table, the chairs, my suitcase. It looked like the concussion from a bomb blast that had simply blown the windows apart, but I hadn't heard a thing. Throwing on a bathrobe, I stepped outside into the chaos. Snippets of conversations washed over me. Hanging from his window, Susan and her husband. Was it an earthquake? How many others? Mama fainted when she saw. Jake is getting his rifle. The old cemetery is all torn up, totally broken. Well, in sum, by the time I left town forever half an hour later, just several hours ago as I write this, I'd learned several things. First, windows all across town were broken. All the windows, in every house, on every street, of every neighborhood. Also, 9 men and women have been found hanging from their window frames, and that was the early report. God only knows how many more have been reported since. I wonder, who were the ancestors of those unfortunate souls? The answer may be linked to another discovery. The small Civil War Union veterans' corner in the cemetery at the edge of town basically no longer exists. Tombstones have been pulverized, graves dug up, bones scattered. God help me. What I had attempted to end, I only let loose. And as I roared out of my old hometown, hands clammy on the steering wheel, feeling every bit a hunted, pursued fugitive, I thought of one final thing I needed to see with my own eyes. A detail that, in the carnage and furor of catastrophe, no one else would even think twice about. I stopped at the graveyard, strode briskly past the desecrated graves, and paused before another, almost as old as those that had been destroyed. It, however, had not only been spared, but honored. Jane Thurston, the inscription on the stone read, 1839, 1871. And at the base of the stone, fresh and brilliant in the early morning sunshine, lay a single, perfect red rose.
You've just heard tonight's story from Dark Nights and Candlelight, 31 Tiny October Tales from author Gregory Miller. You can get this book right now on Amazon at the on-screen link, and Kindle Unlimited users can borrow a copy of the book for free. You can learn more about Gregory Miller and his many amazing books and projects at his website, On Screen. If you have not already, be sure to listen to our event video here and visit our event website to learn all about our upcoming events. Remember to come back after midnight for our next tale. Oh, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button for StoryLink Radio.